last series here is by far, like, we talked about the Hawks for like 25 minutes. Just because that series feels non-competitive right now. This series also feels non-competitive, but I don't really have as many takes on the Brooklyn Nets right now because it's just an incomplete roster.
Yeah.
And this roster was not built for this purpose following the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving deals. I believe they had, like, if not a 500 record, slightly under 500 record after those deals were done. This is not your typical 6 seed in this NBA that has been very parity driven throughout the course of the year. And it feels like, again, Philadelphia has not even had a phenomenal game yet, in my opinion, in this series. And they've just basically kind of kept it in like the even like first gear on some level and just had zero concerns.
I mean, they shot the leather off the ball in game one, particularly in the first half, which allowed them to really build up that comfort in that lead. They win games by keeping it simple.
In the first game too, we had the Paul Reed game, which was super fun as well.
Paul Reed. We love Paul Reed. The Sixers keep it simple, and that's what I appreciate about them in the post-Simmons era and the way that this roster has been built around Joel Embiid is when he commands a double team the way that he absolutely has to against the Brooklyn Nets because Nick Claxton's too small to do it one-on-one. They just have 4 guys that stand around the three-point line and can all shoot the ball. They're the best three-point shooting team through the regular season. Maxey, Harden, Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, Melton, Niang, they're all 38% or above from 3. All of them. There's no guy that you can overwhelmingly help off of. And when you need somebody else to make a play, like Harden, Maxey, they can go out there and do that. Tobias Harris can really exploit guys in one-on-one situations if he needs to. He's a great 4th option to have. But they keep it so simple, and they throw the ball into Joel, and they just say, we dare you to come double team our MVP. And as soon as you do, because Brooklyn has to, it's just wide open 3 after wide open 3 after wide open 3. And they're too good of shooters that strategy is going to win them games.
Yeah. The big problem too for Brooklyn is they basically had to play 33 minutes of Joe Harris and Seth Curry. And on top of it, the 36 minutes that they played of Royce O'Neal were like a disaster. It felt like every time he was on the court. He went 2 for 11, 2 for 9 from 3. It just did not go well for them. Nick Claxton is also not an offensively, viable player in terms of creating his own shot. Dorian Finney-Smith can't create his own shot, but is not a reluctant 3-point shooter at the very least. It's just a lot on Mikal Bridges and Spencer Dinwiddie basically having to take like pull-up jumpers a lot of the time.
Yep.
And that's just really, really tricky. I will say, I thought Mikal Bridges did an outstanding job of drawing defenders toward him and making high-level passing reads in this game. That was probably one of, I don't know how many games Mikal Bridges have had 7 assists like he did in game 2. I can't imagine it's many. But I thought he was really strong and positive with his decision-making and passing in this game.
So not to almost put a bow on it and bring things full circle, but Philly and Boston are both up 2-0 in 2 pretty convincing victories to start their series. And they have done so, as we said, without kicking it into high gear, just by keeping it simple and doing nothing overly complicated. They just can't get bored of that. And when you go into an opposing team's home court for 2 straight games, it's very easy to become a little bit complacent with some of that stuff. This is as much a mental battle for both of these teams over the next couple games as anything else. Can you continue to make shots on the road, and can you just stick to the formula that's working? Because the opponents that you're going against, they don't have enough to make the adjustments to beat you with that strategy.
And I will say, I thought the doubles in game 2, forcing Joel to make passing reads, forcing Joel to be a little bit flustered with the ball, resulted in 8 turnovers from Joel. It was what they wanted in that circumstance. It's just that Joel also dominated the glass entirely, dominated the paint defensively. Joel is a superstar and is incredible in it looks like he's going to win MVP this year uh, for a reason. And it's not just the fact that he led the NBA in scoring, it's that he does all of these other things in conjunction with it, especially when he's like really engaged and when you don't have the ability to really beat drop coverage. And all due respect to Spencer Dinwiddie and Mikal Bridges, they don't really have anybody that can beat drop coverage in this series in the way that you have to in order to pressure this Philadelphia defensive structure, which just makes this like not all that interesting of a series to me.
Yep.
We will certainly find out a lot next series with the Boston Celtics, assuming that comes to fruition. But this series feels feels like it's going to be very difficult for Brooklyn to put a lot of pressure on Philadelphia unless they just get nuclear hot from three and force Joel into a number of turnover situations like they did in game 2.
Yeah. And again, I think that if there's one adjustment or change that Philly can make, it's just by maybe putting the ball in Harden or Maxi's hands a little bit more, maybe to try to get a switch earlier in the clock in some of those regards so that maybe Embiid gets quicker opportunities to catch and finish near the basket. But you don't got to overthink things if you're Doc Rivers. Keep the game simple, keep doing what you've been doing, and just keep defending your asses off.
I mean, Philly turned the ball over 19 times in this game. They only got 16 free throw attempts and they shot 31% from three in game 2, and they still won by 12, let alone by a significant, luck-based factor where you win a tight game like that. They were up 5 going into the fourth quarter and they just absolutely beat them in the fourth quarter. So I don't see this as like an interesting series to talk about. We'll see what, maybe we'll talk about Brooklyn's offseason next episode if the series is at 3-0 and, there's really nothing to talk about. But it's an intriguing setup, I think, moving forward for all of these teams.